Hi guys. So in this lesson I'll be going through the different stages of sleep, sleep deprivation and sleep disturbances. So essentially sleep is an altered state of consciousness, and that should be the first thing that comes out of your pen essentially when you actually answer the question. Right, it follows a daily cycle of about 24 hours and has several shorter cycles within it. You need to know the different time frames for the different rhythms associated with sleep. So circadian rhythms are part of a 24-hour cycle. And the most common one is the human sleep-wake cycle. Generally, people feel sleepy at night and are more alert during the day. This is just common sense here. Right, common environmental cues such as light help to regulate this cycle. So you're going to be awake when it's light outside, you're going to be asleep when it's dark outside. An ultradian rhythm is less than 24 hours. So generally one sleep cycle, which involves the different stages of sleep, lasts for about 90 minutes. So one sleep cycle is an ultradian rhythm. So just going to highlight the fact that a sleep cycle is on average 90 minutes. They're longer at the start, but average is 90. The length of sleep cycles tend to increase as the night goes on. The amount of deep sleep also tends to decrease, and there may be none in the later sleep cycles. NREM sleep periods tend to increase as the night goes on. Alright, so this is a hypnogram. And just so we're clear, I'm just going to go over the important things that you need to know. So you can see down here as we read these are the different hours of sleep. So down the bottom is the hours of sleep. These are the different cycles, and you can see that on average there is 4 to 5 sleep cycles per night. And they roughly go, and if you have a look down at the bottom, they roughly go for 90 to 120 minutes. But the average sleep cycle is 90 minutes. So the green section is when you're awake. So if we have a look up the top here, this is as you've gone to bed. At this point, you might have brief awakenings in cycles 4 and 5, and this might be you've woken up because of a sound. It could be because you've woken up because you need to go to the toilet, whatever it is. You'll also notice that you've got the REM sleep cycles. Now, I'm not entirely sure why that's there to begin with, but the first REM, and then you got the second, and you can see as the night progresses, the REM sleep cycles get bigger and longer. You'll also notice if we go down here that stages 3 and 4, so we've got stage 4 here, but it disappears entirely in cycles 3, 4 and 5. And if we look at stage 3, it's in cycle 1 a couple of times, in cycle 2 a couple of times, in cycle 3 it occurs, but in stages 4 and 5 it doesn't exist. So you go down through the stages, so stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, then you go back up, 3, 2, 1, REM. Then it goes back down, up, down, whatever. So as the night progresses, the amount of time you spend in NREM goes down, whilst the amount of time in REM goes up. Alright, so non-rapid eye movement sleep, or NREM sleep, and you can use the acronym NREM, they allow that, that's perfectly fine in VCAR exams, makes up about 75 to 80% of our total sleep time for adolescents and adults. And that's the question that they ask the most, so 75 to 80% of the time. There are 4 stages of sleep. So there's stage 1, when we drift into true sleep, results in a decrease in heart and breathing rate, muscle tension and body temp, and then you've got alpha and theta waves. In stage 2, it lasts for 10 to 25 minutes in the first ultradian rhythm. Remember, that's less than 24 hours. And lengthens with each successive cycle. And then you have theta brainwaves there. In stage 3, it's the start of deep sleep. And that's a question that VCAR likes to ask a lot. What stage of sleep is the start of deep wave sleep? and that is stage 3. Heart rate, body temperature, blood pressure continue to drop, people are difficult to wake, and there is a mix of theta and delta waves. In stage 4, it is the deepest stage of sleep. People are hardest to wake, so you've got the highest arousal threshold, and that means that it's very difficult to arouse them, to wake them up. Muscles completely relax and there is very little movement. Delta waves are predominant in this particular stage. REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement sleep, makes up 20 to 25 of our total sleep. Remember, if it's a percentage, it has to equal 100. I don't know how many times I've got to tell people that. This is for adolescents and adults. Once again, that is the most common question that's been asked. Not about babies or elderly. They're just usually the comparison. REM sleep is characterized by rapid bursts of eye movement, during which the eyeballs move around under closed eyelids. Heart and breathing rate is faster, and blood pressure rises. However, the sleeper will appear completely relaxed externally. So it'll look like it looks like you're paralyzed. You don't move, or you make very little movements, right? And it's called paradoxical sleep because external you seem very relaxed, but internally your body is actually quite active. Most sleeping occurs during REM sleep. Most dreaming occurs in REM sleep. REM sleep periods lengthen and occur closer together as the night goes on. Brainwaves during REM sleep are fast and irregular and are similar to beta brainwaves, but they are usually beta-like. That's why they call them beta-like. They are like beta waves. And you can pause and read the question. There are 2 theories associated with sleep. The restoration theory proposes that sleep is a time out that helps us to recover from depleting activities during the day. And they use up the body's resources, both physical and mental. Sleep does this by allowing the body to recover by replenishing resources that have been used up, such as neurotransmitters. It also repairs damaged cells and removes waste products from muscles. NREM sleep, according to the restoration theory, right, is important for restoring the body, whilst REM sleep is important for restoring the brain. Evidence for this is that infants spend a much higher proportion of sleep time in REM sleep as their minds are developing extremely quickly, right, just as much as what their bodies are. The second theory is the evolutionary theory, or the circadian theory, or the survival theory. There are many names. The evolutionary theory proposes that sleep has evolved to enhance survival by protecting an organism by making it inactive during the most dangerous part of the day, which is nighttime. So it's there to protect the organism during a time when we can't actually see at night. So when sleeping, an organism isn't in contact with the outside environment and therefore is less likely to attract the unwanted attention of predators. Therefore, it is protected from potential harm or death. The criticism of the theory is that by sleeping, we're actually at an increased lack of awareness and alertness, which could make us more vulnerable to attack. And we can't actually prepare for the danger. And you can pause and read the question. Okay, so sleep across the lifespan. As we age, sleep patterns change quite significantly. As we get older, the total time we spend in sleep tends to decrease. Infants may sleep for up to 16 hours a day, whilst older adults might sleep for 6 to 7 hours per day. The amount of time in REM sleep decreases during the first 2 years of life and remains fairly stable through to an old age. Usually it's around 20 to 25. Elderly is usually around 22. When you're in infancy, it's usually 50%. And that's the question that VCAR likes to ask about the REM cycle. As people age, the amount of deep sleep decreases. So when you get into your elderly years, they might have very little to no deep sleep, and they spend a lot of time in NREM stage 2. So this is how it looks over the lifespan, and you can see here that they have 50% as newborns or neonates and 50% in NREM. If we happen to look as we go down, right, the amount of sleep needed goes down as well. And the amount of REM sleep goes down as well. Right, so NREM goes up, and this is usually around the time that we are, getting older or going through hormonal changes, so we need more time in NREM sleep, according to the restoration theory. And you can read this question and have a look. Sleep tips. Use the graphs to help you to learn to sleep. Over the last couple of years, they've been adding more and more graphs in, so don't ignore them because you're struggling to read them. Actually read them, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. REM sleep decreases across the lifespan, and REM sleep increases. REM sleep tends to increase across sleep cycle, and NREM sleep decreases. For the restoration theory, NREM is body, REM is brain. To remember this, you can think of your body as bigger than your brain, and people spend more time in NREM sleep than REM sleep. Whatever floats your boat. Sleep disturbances. Circadian phase disorders are a group of sleep disorders that results from a mismatch, and that's the buzzword the VCAR really wants you to keep. It is a mismatch between a person's sleep-wake pattern and a desired or normal pattern. So in other words, the amount of sleep you want to have doesn't match with the sleep you are currently getting. I would like to get 9 hours of sleep each night, but really I'm only getting 5. We look at 3 key reasons that you are susceptible to circadian rhythm phase disorders. The one that will come up 100 million trillion %, even though that doesn't exist, is sleep-wake cycle shift in adolescence. This is what you guys theoretically have. And the sleep-wake cycle shift in adolescence is when during adolescence the sleep-wake cycle shift is delayed by 1 to 2 hours. Basically, you guys fall asleep 1 to 2 hours later and wake up 1 to 2 hours later if possible. During lockdown, you actually do get to do this. However, on a normal day, you don't. So your sleep-wake patterns would be better in lockdown, well, theoretically, than what they would if you were going to school each day. This occurs because the hormone melatonin is released 1 to 2 hours later in adolescent's body. Melatonin is a sleep hormone, and high levels of melatonin equals drowsiness. So make sure you know that melatonin helps you to sleep. This shift can lead to sleep deprivation if the adolescent falls asleep 1 to 2 hours later at night, but still has to wake up earlier than the desired time to attend school or work. This can lead to impaired concentration, sleepiness, lethargy, and difficulty regulating moods during waking hours. In other words, you all get grumpy. Factors such as work, schoolwork, and socializing can also lead to adolescents sleeping at a later time. So not only are you guys falling asleep later, but you're also delaying it yourself by, doing other stuff late into the night. Shift work is another reason. So we're also shifting our sleep-wake patterns by working shift work, where we're working the normal 9 to 5 hours, but you're doing it at different times. People who work permanent night shift tend to have sleep problems, as they may struggle sleeping during the day. This can result in the loss of sleep and therefore lead to sleepiness during waking hours. This can then have consequences for safety due to a reduced level of alertness, particularly if a job involves operating machinery. Right? So you tend to be sleepier if you work shift work late into the night. Rotating shifts tend to be more problematic than ones that are more permanent. Jet lag is another sleep disturbance, and this is a circadian sleep disorder caused by travel across multiple time zones, therefore throwing out the sleep-wake cycle. This results in a mismatch, VCAR, love that word, between our internal biological clock and the external environment. So in other words, what they're saying is when you should be asleep in your home country is different to when you should be awake in the country that you're currently in. So if you're in London and you normally go to bed at, I don't know, 9 o'clock in Melbourne and it's like 5 a.m. in London, there's a good chance that you are not going to be sleeping then. So this is that mismatch. It can result in difficulty sleeping, sleepiness during waking hours, reduced alertness and concentration, and impaired cognitive ability. Jet lag tends to be less disruptive when people travel west. And the key words that they like to use with that one is traveling west is best. And this is because you're following the path of the sun. And there's less of a mismatch between our biological clock and the external environment. And you can read that if you wish. Sleep deprivation is caused by a lack of either inadequate quality or quantity of sleep. If you're getting enough, so let's say you're getting the 6 to 9 hours, which is adolescent amount of sleep that you need, then it could be a problem with the quality of your sleep, not the quantity. Partial sleep deprivation involves having less sleep than is required when compared to total sleep deprivation, which is having no sleep at all. Usually with VCAR and VCE Psychology, you're usually looking at partial sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation can occur due to a number of reasons, work, school, and can have a number of different effects on a person, and it's different for every single person. And there are different categories: affective, behavioural, and cognitive functioning. So with affective disturbances during sleep, it could be the fact that you have amplified emotional responses, your emotional reactions are quick and exaggerated, and you may struggle to effectively control your emotions. When you're sleep deprived, people tend to find it more difficult to process emotional information and make an appropriate emotional response. You also may struggle to understand other people's emotions. It is also believed that a deprivation of REM sleep can lead to decreased control over emotions. With behavioural functioning, it might affect many aspects of your behaviour. It could be sleep inertia, which is immediately after you wake up, you feel really, really groggy, you're really slow to react, and you have reduced alertness. However, the main behavioural effect of sleep deprivation is excessive sleepiness. And this leads to impaired concentration, decreased reaction time, decreased alertness, and a number of mistakes being made. Microsleeps can also occur due to sleep deprivation. And this is where you're having very brief period of sleep, usually a couple of seconds where you just close your eyes, or sometimes you've even got your eyes open, right? And you just sort of space out and you fall asleep. Partial sleep deprivation can also lead to decreased control over behaviour, reduced motor coordination, reduced speed and accuracy on tasks. Cognitive functions. Partial sleep deprivation can lead to impaired attention and reduced alertness and concentration. They're the ones that they usually ask you to look at anyway. Specifically, sleep deprivation can lead to decreased selective attention, so you can't focus, and decreased ability to divide attention. It can also lead to impaired problem solving and decision making. You also have lack of clear logical thinking, and people who are sleep deprived tend to perform poorly on learning and memory tasks, especially if they are very simple. But you seem to do pretty well on complex tasks because you actually have to focus. And you may want to read the question. Types of sleep disturbances. You've got dysomnias, which are sleep disorders relating to difficulty initiating and maintaining sleep at a regular time. This includes insomnia, and that's the one that we more often than not look at, as well as circadian rhythm phase disorders. So if they ask about sleep disturbances, you'll say circadian rhythm phase disorders and insomnia are dysomnias. And then we also look at shift work, jet lag, sleep-wake shift in adolescence. more often than not, VCAR looks at sleep onset insomnia. And this is a consistent difficulty initiating sleep and generally leads to poor quantity and quality of sleep. If you're going to be diagnosed with insomnia, you must have consistently struggled to fall asleep within 20 to 30 minutes, and you suffer from poor quality of sleep over a very long period of time. And it interrupts the sleep-wake cycle as an individual is unable to fall asleep when you'd like to, and you may need to either be asleep longer in the morning, or you'll actually suffer from partial sleep deprivation. Parasomnias, on the other hand, are inappropriate activity occurring during sleep. And this might be sleepwalking, it might be sleep talking, could be night terrors, whatever. Right? So it's during sleep. Dysomnias are going to sleep. So sleepwalking is a parasomnia, and this involves getting out of bed, walking, or performing other activities while sleeping, sometimes called somnambulism. And VCAR have been very mean on a couple of exams and said, is somnambulism a dysomnia or a parasomnia, which was one of the questions. And yeah, just know what somnambulism is. A major concern with this is the individual's ability to hurt themselves while sleepwalking, which is not often felt until the individual awakens. So you could actually cut yourself and not even realize you've done it. Usually occurs during NREM stages 3 and 4 sleep. So sleepwalking is in 3 and 4. And if they wake up whilst walking, they may be confused and disorientated, and as a result may take some time to fall asleep again, which could be a loss in stages 3 and 4. And because you're up and about and you're doing things when you should be asleep, you're actually more fatigued and tired throughout the day. And you can read the question and try to answer. Interventions for treating sleep disorders. CBT, when in doubt, CBT. And it combines cognitive behavioral therapies to treat the disorder. A key assumption of CBT is that the way people behave and think is due to the way that people behave is due to the way they think. So CBT often changes the way you think about something. So instead of worrying about why you're not sleeping, CBT will try to change that and go, all right, so you're not sleeping, but let's see if we can look at it in a different way. So CBT aims to change these negative thoughts and behaviours with more balanced ones. So the cognitive component helps the individual to change dysfunctional attitudes and thoughts about sleep, and helps them to stop worrying about falling asleep. The behavioural component is to develop good sleeping habits, which involves stimulus control therapy, which means to strengthen the bed and bedroom cues for sleep. So you only actually use the bedroom and the bed for sleeping. Sleep hygiene is pretty much providing people with information about practices that improve sleep. So don't use your phone before bed, don't have a big meal before bed, try to do some exercise or not do some exercise depending on which psychologist you talk to. So they're the behavioural components. So think of it this way. This is the behavioural component is the heading. These are the subheadings. So they're part of behavioural components. Bright light therapy is another way of treating sleep disorders, and it essentially is exposing you to intense but safe amounts of light to treat circadian rhythm phase disorders by shifting the sleep-wake cycle to a desired schedule. And this is usually exposing you to light, usually a light box, but they can also say, okay, go outside. And essentially what they're trying to do is expose you to light when you should be awake. And this might be helpful to countries where you are currently experiencing, long periods of nighttime. They would encourage you to have light on when you should be awake instead of just following the cues of what's outside. Some tips Basically, all of this section, excluding the sleep-wake cycle shift in adolescence, is new this year. Okay, it's not new this year. It's for this 2017 study design. Go over it in great detail. Difference between dysomnias and parasomnias is easily examinable, right? They'll always ask a question about it. Know a few symptoms of partial sleep deprivation. Easy ones to remember are amplified emotional responses, impaired concentration, increased reaction time, and general sleepiness and tiredness. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask.